Okay guys, this is video 3.1. This is the first video of module 3, and in this video we're going to examine this new referencing feature of Excel's that is called absolute referencing. The idea here is that we're trying to design a spreadsheet that enables us to model Nathan's savings in such a way that we can change the gift and the allowance to anything that we want to change it to and have the changes reflected in Nathan's savings. So we saw that in order to begin the design of this spreadsheet, the first thing that we needed to do was we needed to make special cells for the gift and the allowance. Okay, so we know that Nathan's gift starts out at $5 and that he gets $2 a week for the allowance, and making this special place right here for the gift and the allowance will enable us to change these to anything we want to. If I want to change the gift to $10, I'll be able to change it very easily right here, or make the allowance, $5 a week. I can change it right here, and hopefully the design will enable me to have these changes reflected when I make the changes in here. All right, the next step were familiar steps. We made columns for weeks and savings. We generated the weeks in the very familiar recursive way. We added 1 to the contents of cell C2, and we entered this formula, and then we put our cursor in cell C3 and we dragged this down. We'll drag down to 8 weeks. That's good. And then we started looking at some formulas for savings. Okay, and the first formula we looked at, I wanted to do this using a non-recursive formula, and we saw that the non-recursive formula, that was the hint that I gave you. We know that the non-recursive formula stems from the equation y equals 2x plus 5. So we know that we can put in here 2 times, x stands for the number of weeks, so that's 2 times C2 plus 5. Okay, and there's this formula for savings. And that formula will actually work just fine. This formula, 2 times C2 plus 5, that formula will work just fine. We saw this formula work in Module 2, so that's not a problem. Okay. Now, I want to make use of the fact that my spreadsheet contains the number 2, puts the number 2 in cell B2, and it puts the number 5 in cell B1. So instead of putting the 2 here in the formula, instead of putting the number 2 in the formula, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that 2 with cell B2. It's still the same thing. It's still the number 2. It's just that the 2 is being referenced in a different way. It's being given a different name. And likewise, I'm going to change, I'm just using my right arrow to get here to the number 5. I'm going to change this 5. You can see which cell the 5 is in. It's in cell B1. And I'm going to put that in right there. Okay, so we've got the initial condition is working so far. That is certainly in place. Okay, remember the formula looks like this. And I asked you guys to ask yourselves, what is going to happen when we drag this formula down? So for example, what is going to happen to B2 when I drag this formula down? And the answer to this should have been that B2 is going to become B3, B4, B5, and B6, and so on. Okay, well, if you come to B3, which is here, and B4, which is here, and B5, and B6, you should see that those cells are empty. They don't contain anything. So when this formula drags, it's going to be referencing cells that don't contain anything. So something is going to go awry. Something is not going to work. So we're going to hit return, and we're going to watch this formula fall apart. And it does fall apart. We're not getting Nathan's savings. We're not getting 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13, and so forth. And in fact, if you look at the formulas underlying this, let me just adjust this a little bit. Look at the formula for savings, you can see the B2 and the B3 and the B4 and the B5 and the B6, and you can see how those cells are empty. And the same thing happens here with the y-intercept. The B1 is good, that's got the 5 in it, but then we've got B2 That's no longer a gift, that's the allowance, so that goes wrong there. And then again, we've got empty cells, B3, B4, and B5. Okay, so that's not working for us. Let's go back here. Okay, and let us clear, just going to adjust the formatting a little bit, I'm going to clear these cells because those aren't working for us. Okay, so here's our formula. So what we want to have happen is we want cell B2 to stay as cell B2 when we drag it down. We don't want it to change. And likewise, we want cell B1 to stay B1 when we drag it down. We don't want it to change. So these are the two cells. We want B2 and B1 to stay fixed. Cell C2 is behaving just fine. It's dragged down as C2 and C3 and C4 and C5, so that means it is referencing the weeks that we want it to reference. So in order to tell Excel that we want to fix a particular cell, what you do is you put dollar signs around the cell. So there you go. I have just fixed cells B2 and B1. And now when I drag that formula down, those cells are not going to change. So let me enter this. There's my initial condition. Let me drag this formula down. That's working. There you go. There's 7 for week 1 and 9. See how it's adding $2 each week. So that's working. And in fact, if you look at these formulas, look at this formula now. It says B2 star C3 plus B1. The dollar signs around the B2 and around the B1 are holding the B2 and the B1 fixed. They're not changing. And that's exactly what we want because we want B2 to be 2 and we want B1 to be 5. All the way down, you can see that it's working. And naturally, the weeks are changing the way that we want them to change. And the best part about this now is that if I want to change what's in cell B1, let's say I want to give Nathan a very generous gift of $50 at the beginning, I can change this to a 50, and now watch what happens to the savings. They change to reflect that change. So now his initial condition is 0.50. If I want to change his allowance to $10 a week, you can do that. Everything gets adjusted accordingly. And you can just play with these numbers as much as you want and make sure that they're working for you. And they are, in fact, working for you. Let's bring this one up. See the number 15 is right here? So let's bring that up. This is basically taking cell B2. B2 has a 5 in it. That's 5 times 1. C3 is a 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus whatever is in B1, that's 10. So 5 plus 10 equals 15. And it's working just the way we want it to. All right, so give this a try. You've got this now in written form and in the form of this video. Make sure you understand what went wrong. Make sure you understand how the absolute referencing helps you. And then we'll move on from here.